They tell you that you're going to work with your dog for 8 to 10 years, the maximum amount of time that you're going to be able to work with your dog. And they kind of drill that into you because it helps to prepare you a little bit for that eventual outcome.
So how do you know when the guide dog is ready to retire? What's going to happen to them? Do you have a plan?
When they start to get older, when they're 9 or 10 or 11 years old, you have to start paying attention to how they're moving and how they're guiding, and what their general ability to work is like. And there's a bit of a process to go through. Sometimes the school will help you determine if the dog is still able to work competently. But like people, like anything else, as they age, they get mentally slower, physically slower. They might start developing some arthritis or some physical problems, and at that point, it's not fair to keep them working.
I think it's very individualistic as the person who has the guide dog and the dog themselves, and the age at which they choose to retire. Vista, Colin's first guide dog, was I think about 8. I think she'd worked for about 6 years, and she didn't want to go out in the cold anymore. She was happy to go to work when it was nice, but no thank you, I'm not going out in the cold anymore. And at that point she had decided she was retiring, and that's exactly what she did.
He kind of told me partway through my school year that he was done. He didn't really want to get in harness every day. So while I was living in student residence, me and the residence manager came to an agreement that he stays in res as long as I'm there, provided I take him out like once, twice a week. So when I got home, I retired him. He was 100% ready to.
I've always heard that your dog will tell you when they're ready. We had our staff Christmas party at West Edmonton Mall. Jenny loves West Edmonton Mall for some reason that makes no sense to anybody, because I find West Edmonton Mall anxiety provoking. And I gave her a command to go left, and she stood there like I had asked her to do a backflip in the middle of the mall. It was like she had no idea which left. Did I want her to go all the way left, like do a hard left? Do I want her to go straight down this hallway in front of us and go find the next store to our left? It was like she had no idea what to do. And I ended up going to the bathroom and crying and just being like, I cannot believe that this dog, who has been so decisive for 9 years, has no idea what she's supposed to do. And that was so hard. I knew at that point that her days of like the great big adventure were done.
When they retire, if the blind person is in a situation where they can keep the dog in their home, then they will. Otherwise, the school that the dog was trained at typically has a program set up for people to adopt retired guide dogs, and they go to another loving family that'll basically treat them as a very well-pampered pet until the time they pass away.
The very fortunate thing for Vista was that her puppy raising family that had had her for the first couple of years of her life, or the first year of her life, wanted her back. They wanted her to retire with them, and that's where she retired.
Retirement of my first guide, we started the process for my parents to actually legitimately and legally adopt him from the school so that he could stay with them while I was going through school.
When I retired my first dog, she went and lived with a friend of mine just outside of Brantford, Ontario. And then with Gecko, he will retire most likely to one of my coworkers, just for the fact that where I currently live, I do rent. And so the rental property is a no dogs place, and I can't have a pet dog. So once they retire, they're I guess basically stripped of the guide dog title and become a pet.
Yeah, I've kept all of our animals. We've never, when my other dog couldn't do service dog work, he just hangs out at home and he's a happy-go-lucky pet. That was a hard change for him. He wanted to work, and every time I brought the vest out to put on Bailey, he'd cry and try to run to the door, and he'd get excited. He still tasks at home, but he gets to be happy, and he gets to do what he wants to do regardless of work.
I think I always knew that I wanted Jenny to stay with me when she retired. She has given me some of the best years of my life, and if I were in a position where I could not keep her with me, that would be very sad. I know that we have a true village that would be willing to take her, but I think that would be harder on her and me to be separated. And when I came home with Yasha, the first day we did a walk to the office and the same sort of thing happened. Jen was like, "There's a harness, it must be mine." And that's tough. That's really, really tough.
Sometimes when you retire one dog, it's almost painful for them to have to stay home while the other dog gets into harness and goes off to work. They love their job. They're used to being out and around other people. They're used to being around other situations.
One of her best human friends ever comes by every day and picks her up every morning, takes her home with him, and Jenny thinks retirement is the best thing ever. Yasha is nothing if not polite, and the fact that they love each other makes things so much easier, and it reinforces that for me I made the right decision keeping Jenny with me.
I kept Rowan. He retired when he was about 11, and he lived until he was 13. So he was retired for 2 years. He was a big, long, tall, 90-pound black lab, and he started to get a little bit of arthritis, which we were able to treat with various things, medications, but it wasn't fair to make him continue to work at that point. So he retired, and then
Colin couldn't replace him. He had formed such an attachment to that dog, and that dog had worked for so long that he chose to use a cane, go back to using a cane, and allow Rowan to retire with him and to live out his life with him. And Colin didn't replace him until Rowan was gone. That can be a difficult situation, I think, for somebody to go back and forth between a cane and a working dog. It's a sacrifice that Colin was making for a dog that had sacrificed all his life working for him.
I'm a planner. When Jen turned 8 in March of 2020, I had this massive, step-by-step plan of what I was going to do and how I was going to retire her and then apply for another dog. And in March of 2020, everything just shut down. She turned 8 and we stopped going places because fewer places were open. My job moved to working from home. And when I did take her out places, she handled it like an absolute boss. She was amazing. She wanted to work. When the Oilers were in the playoffs in 2022, we'd go down to Rogers Place for the watch parties. And when Edmonton beat Calgary during the Battle of Alberta series, we ended up pretty much in the middle of a riot. And Jenny was just like, "I am rockstar guide dog. I will keep my head and be amazing and help get you out of here." I do think the pandemic gave me more time to work with her.
When Bailey hits 6, so in 3 more years, I will be getting a prospect to work with and train. In my personal belief, I don't think dogs should start working on mobility until at least 2, when they're kind of done growing, their joints are fused and everything, and you're not gonna hurt them. So you want to start the basics of, in heart rate indication, anxiety stuff. I want them to be able to do that before we start working on mobility. Unfortunately, she can't work forever, but she loves her job, and that's gonna be, I think, a challenge for Bailey, passing on the torch to my next one.
I will be applying for my 3rd guide dog starting in the new year. Gecko is going to be 8 years old on Saturdays. And I chose when I got my first dog that I wouldn't work my dogs past the age of 10. And so because of the COVID pandemic and the wait lists that the schools are having with catching up, it's about a 2-year wait list. And so I decided I'd start the application a year early. Gecko he's gonna be 8, he's still healthy, still loves working, because he's put in so many years of dragging me around that I want to make sure he enjoys retirement.
Hi, my name is Pauline, and I'm wondering if it's harder to say goodbye to a guide dog than a pet.
There's more of an emotional impact with, you know, losing a guide dog just because they're by your side 24/7 for, you know, 10, 12 years. When you have to say goodbye to a dog, a friend like that, and a partner, it's very, very difficult. It's really hard. It's like one of the hardest things I ever had to do.
The nation's close to retirement, and that I know is going to be the hardest part of letting him go. I couldn't let him go. I don't even know if I can replace him. It's too soon. Too soon to tell if I could replace him or not. I couldn't even think about it right now. Nation, come. Come. It's okay. He senses Mama's an emotional mess right now. Yeah. It's all right. Mama's okay. He hates me being emotional.
Powell is a type of dog that I think the bond is more significant. Something happened to Powell where he couldn't work anymore. I try not to think about if that would ever happen. You know, what would ever happen, I would deal with it, of course, if it happened, but you try not to think about those things, and you try and just enjoy the bond and the working relationship that you have while it exists.
He really is my angel by my side. He's been beside me for 8 years, and he has been somebody, really. Not an animal, but somebody that has helped me for 8 years. I couldn't imagine my life without him.
Very hard, like probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, because it's not just saying goodbye, but it's making the decision that the dog needs to be put to sleep at that point, because, you know, you've been with them for so long. I was with Rowan for 11 years, and they become part of the family. And sometimes you wait too long to make the decision, and the dog is suffering at that point. And so you have to be very brutal with yourself and say, is the dog suffering more than what it's worth for my own emotional state to keep them around? Sometimes that means you got to put them to sleep because the suffering is happening, and there's nothing you can do about it because they've gotten old and there's nothing that can fix them anymore. So.
Will you get another guide dog, or is it just too difficult to say goodbye?
You have to go through that emotional turmoil and anxiety, emotional stress of when a dog is retiring, when a dog passes away. But at the same time, you know that there's going to, if you choose, there's going to be another dog that's going to be very full of life and ready to go and young and energetic.
I think with retiring my first dog was the hard part, because it's like, she's my first dog. And so I was like, you know, you have that fear of comparing the two dogs. Is he or she gonna be the same as Maisie? Is it, you know, what are they gonna work like? What are they gonna walk like?
There's emotions that come along with knowing that, okay, now I'm gonna go and I'm gonna have a new dog, and it's gonna be a completely different dog, and different name and different character and a different type, maybe even a different breed of dog, and maybe it was a different gender, whatever it is, right? It's going to be all different. So there's some emotion to that.
In terms of the transition, it's always that same, you know, am I going to compare them? How is the dog going to work? And then just from a senior dog to a puppy is a lot different, because you have to kind of be on top of them for their house behavior and obedience.
Having that independence and freedom is definitely worth it, even though you know that at some point it's going to be really tough to say goodbye to that dog. Knowing the positives and the rewards that you're going to get from a dog, it doesn't make it easier to say goodbye to them, but it at least balances things out overall.